All right, good morning, everybody. Trying this different restream. So we're going to do another morning briefing. Start with Market Watch this morning. We want to see what we have on the docket today. 8:30, 10, 10:30, 11, 45. Right. So Jerome Powell, this one is not supposed to be very impactful. We want to be aware that he's going to be speaking in case he puts his foot in his mouth or does something that rocks the market. He's just not expected to really rock the market. Other than that, we have the 8:30 industrial production. Now, this one, it's so close to when the bonds open. You're probably going to want to be standing on the sidelines anyways as those bonds open at 8:20. And then that really only leaves us 10 and 10:30. On the 10:30 one here, the EIA petroleum status, USO is a great ETF to use if you're looking to play that. Uh, a lot of Wednesdays, the report comes out and nothing happens. What you want to be looking for with USO is, and when this report comes out, does the market start to really shake and run or fall? If it's not, then it's just a shrug and you move on and it's no big deal. So, 7 out of 10, maybe 8 out of 10 times, nothing's going to happen. And by 10:35, 10:40, it was a dud and you just move on. On those rare occasions where the report rocks the market, you will already be sitting there watching USO ready to go. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at the futures. Then you can see that after that hard sell-off in the NASDAQ the last few days, we kind of built this base and we began to rally out, had a nice wedge forming. Everything was following along perfectly. We measured these and then we use that measurement to identify where our target should be. The way to do that is just to draw this line right there. I know it's hard to see at the moment, but we're just going to use it to project. Right? So this was what it was projected to do. And instead it stalled. It got to that floor pivot and then it failed there. Started to consolidate, give us micro double tops around that 1% mark, and then everything just started to fall over from there. Right now, we are holding the range, but it really all is resting on the move of the dollar, which we're going to get to in a moment. But when you're trying to think about like what's moving the market and why are the institutions getting in or getting out, if you look at what happened in the dollar and in the bonds in the overnight hours, watch how my mouse synchronizes across all these charts. So here was a move in the bonds, and then a few minutes later, 30 minutes later, there was the move in the marketplace, right? So it bled over. Or if we back up, here was the move in the dollar, and it coincided perfectly with that explosion. The dollar and the bonds are one of your best indicators that you could use. And then we look at the VIX for that confirmation, right? So keep your eye on the dollar and the bonds throughout the trading day. In the overnight hours, it's amazing because, during the day, you got tick, you got trend, AD, market breadth. At night, you don't really have a lot of things. So at least you have the dollar and the bonds to look at. When the dollar and the bonds rock and roll, it will shape our marketplace. So that move up in the dollar killed the rally in the NASDAQ and the ES. You can see right now everything's kind of crumbling and falling apart. That VIX is popping up. The dollar also popping up. The dollar opens at 8 a.m. The bonds open at 8:20. They're a good early warning heads up on what kind of trading day we're going to look at. So for today, let's go ahead and get this back out of the way. We are up in the NASDAQ 0.5%, and we're starting to fail. We broke this pivotal level. We're going to be looking to reclaim the what we call the roundy, 14,800. Below that, the previous close, and then yesterday's low. And beyond that, then we start getting into the negatives. 0.5%, a 1%, 1.5% move to the downside. Right? But first, we have these pivot points to get through, starting with the previous close, which is the close of yesterday, and then the low of yesterday. Those are going to be two critical pivot points that we want to resolve. Notice, by the way, we are already underneath the weekly expected move, so that's a done deal. If you're wondering what I'm talking about with the weekly expected move, on a daily chart, you have your options measured weekly expected move. And you can see that we are underneath that level, right? So a one standard deviation move beyond that level, the algorithms are going to kick in and they sell into selling because they're trying to get back to a delta neutral. And the only way they can get delta neutral is to balance that selling into more we fall, the more they sell to get delta neutral. Of course, the more they sell to get delta neutral, the more they cause us to fall. And it becomes this vicious cycle until the expiration day. If things do begin to turn around, say some later economic news or just the market starts to turn back with the dollar and the bonds, we will work through the pivot point and then the price shelf from yesterday around that 930 range and then back up to the open of yesterday. That would put us at a 1.5% move to the upside. The upside target would be the weekly expected move bottom, right? That would be our target back up. I just don't see that's going to happen yet this morning. And more likely, we will be focusing on range. The range right now is going to be the Globex high and the low of yesterday. That's going to be our trading range for right now. It's really the most pivotal thing to focus on. And beyond that, it'll be dealing with yesterday's price or even stepping beyond that and looking back farther. All right. So let's take it over to the ES now. Again, the same situation. You can already see the boxes that I had drawn. The box here is measuring out yesterday's range. I often talk about, the ease or difficulty of trading within a trading day. And if you're trading inside of yesterday's price action, it's often very violent, choppy, range bound, not a really good, clean price action. So if you're finding it difficult to day trade in the futures and you're thinking this is really hard to do, try waiting on those days where we are not inside yesterday's price action, where the message is a lot cleaner. You can see where we left yesterday's price and the moves were solid and clean until we began to consolidate down at these lows yesterday. A nice textbook trend day yesterday right into the lunchtime. So here in the ES, we've already broke that minor pivot. We are headed towards the previous close. That would be my target. Beyond the previous close, we have yesterday's close, and then we have the expected move bottom. That is the final target for the day. That's the first. Let me say it a little differently. That's where I'm expecting us to hold the day. That's really where I expect us to end up today. In this move right now, if we breach the previous close, I'm going to be expecting it to reciprocate around the low of yesterday. If we make through that, the EM target. Notice the EM target is very close to a 0.5% move. A 0.5% is not very much. A 1% move would get us through the cog line. Be aware that there is a cog line 43.11. And if we get through that, then a 1% move. So every one of those pivot points become a tradable opportunity. What are we going to do when price gets there? All right, from that, let's go over to Trading View. Now I've already got this set up. We're looking at the S&P 500, but I filtered it. I really just want the top 100 names. So I filtered it by market cap. You can see it's not perfect. I've got 102 names, but we're not looking at the full 500 names. It is set to pre-market, and we're looking at all of the names that are up in the pre-market. The coloring begins when we are greater than 0.51. So if we're up, say 0.46, it's not going to change colors. Berkshire Hathaway, well, here you go. Cisco Systems is up, 0.41. It's up on the day, just not up enough to turn green. Same thing with the red. It won't turn red unless we're down negative 0.51. Right? So you can see we've got a lot of diversity in technology, some of the streaming services, healthcare. So we've got a broad spectrum of green. On the other hand, the financials really don't seem to be liking that move that we saw in the bonds and the dollar. And they're going to be the ones that we really want to focus on through the day for trading opportunities for some extreme moves, right? When we're looking for those really big ATR days, finance would be what I would look for today. This is the NASDAQ 100. It doesn't require a filter. It's already got 100 names. You can see there's a lot of green across the board. A lot of different sectors and subsectors are green. So we got a good follow through ratio here. But look at retail. It's really not looking that good, right? As a sector, retail is looking really rough. There are a few good names, but there are also as many negative down in there this morning, right? So one thing that I like to do to just kind of get some real perspective, I've changed the filter to an S&P 100, and I'm asking how many names are up at least 0.5% this morning in the S&P. So extended hours, 0.5%. We can validate here 0.5% to the upside. Only the upside. 26 names. So we can say 26% of the S&P is up more than 0.5% this morning. That's a pretty good number. It's not too bad. We could check the NASDAQ, get the same kind of valuations. So we want to jump over and check the NASDAQ. Same thing, extended hours. How many names in the NASDAQ 100 are up more than 0.5%? 37 names, 37% is up this morning, more than 0.5%. That's good, strong. It's a lot of good names in there. What we want to do now is filter through those names and start looking for a particular sector or subsector. Notice the AMD and microchip technology are both up this morning. I would start to see that and then ask more questions. Where's NVIDIA, Texas Instruments, Taiwan Semiconductors, other names that fit this? Well, there's Texas Instruments right there. So it's another name this morning that is up. So we know the chips are up. I would look, for airlines, cruise lines, casinos, pot stocks, right? Follow them down. EV markets, like electronic vehicle markets, follow them down the road. If you find a name, look for its peer group, because price action is going to be your best indicator. And if I want to trade Walmart, I want to know what other companies like Costco are going to match what Walmart's doing. And is it Walmart only moving by itself, or is Walmart moving with its peers, with its sector or subsector or industry? And is that industry hot this morning? That's how I like to follow it down the rabbit hole. This is the S&P 100 watch list set to extended hours. You can see that Boeing is leading the way. I wanted to take a moment to talk about Boeing because we have a red to green crossover. Yesterday, it closed in the lower part of the day. In the pre-market, it has rallied up. You can see where the orange box is here that says pre-market. So this is where we closed. This is where we are right now. We're getting ready to open near the high of yesterday's price action. We're above yesterday's open, and we're looking to open near yesterday's high. This has the potential for a really good move in Boeing. Notice also it would be above the entire little range that we have here, right? So if this is our range, we're going to be opening above all of that. Clear skies, other than this one doji candle, right? So this is going to be the only one that really causes us some questions. That one right there. So Boeing is going to be on my list. This kind of red to green crossover, you can get a really good ATR day like this day right here. Massive ATR day. All right, so keep your eye on Boeing this morning. Again, the chip names. So we got, NVIDIA, and we want to look for Texas Instruments and those other ones. Costco has been a beast through the year. We've had this really nice consolidation, and yesterday it was really holding those lows, sitting right at the 50-period moving average. If we bounce that 50 like we did back here, we could have an amazing follow-through, and we'd really be focusing in the near term on getting back to the top of the range. So I'm going to be watching this one this morning as well. I want to see it breach that Globex high and be looking for a move back up. If this breaks the 50, then we'll just flip the script, run it the other direction, and maybe make a move to the downside. But I want to see it break that 50 on, say, the 30-minute or the 1-hour chart and get a candle close below. I don't want to trade it just as soon as it breaks the range. Microsoft broke that range yesterday, a massive move to the downside, and now I'm going to be looking for some kind of reciprocation play. Notice that we are opening off of its lows, or at least at the moment, the pre-market, we're up. We want to see this continue to come up in the pre-market, and the closer it gets to the open of yesterday, the better. That way we can open near the top of this candle and try to close that gap. That'll be the play if we continue to move that direction. LLY broke that range yesterday, closed the gap. So the gap is closed. Now we want to see what it's going to do here, right? This would be another one on my list. Notice also it's trying to open near the high of yesterday or near the open of yesterday. So I'm going to be looking at this for a red to green. At the very least, trying to run it back up to Monday's high. Remember, everything is dependent upon that economic news for this morning, and 3 out of 4 markets follow the market, S&P, NASDAQ. So if the S&P and the NASDAQ go down, it's very likely a lot of these names are going to continue to go down as well. All right, everybody, that is the morning briefing. Have a good one, and I will see you all at the live stream in the Bullish Bears Large Caps room.